see if this is working. Okay, testing. This should be working, and I'm going to share it. Just to make this make sure this works, I'm going to be sharing it through my Discord, as well as on Facebook and Blue Sky, those areas, just because I don't have a streaming feature on there. Just trying to get it out to the audiences in the area from Taiwan, maybe the northern Philippines, those areas, and then we'll get right into our discussion. Okay, that should be it. If you guys can hear me, can you please let me know in the chat? This should be working. I'm just going to test it real quick. Yes. Yes, I can hear myself typing. All right. Hello, Mackenzie. Now let's get into it. So here's a look at, or good morning to those in Taiwan. If you're just waking up, you're probably seeing impacts already from Typhoon Podal, which has strengthened to a Category 2, nearly Category 3, as it nears Taitung County in southeastern Taiwan. Now, if we go on, again, over the overall impacts over the next 2 days or so, give or take, this will mainly be over the next 24 hours or so for parts of Taiwan. But if we go on over throughout the next 2 days or so, the worst impacts really to expect. We can see that at least marginal impacts are impacting all of Taiwan, parts of Fujian province in China, and further inland into mainland China, wherever the center goes. Now, for China, it's mostly a rain threat. For Taiwan, it's more of a wind threat. Going on into slight impacts, we can see it's mainly for the southern half of Taiwan. That's again a mixture of wind and rain, whereas the impacts going inland into parts of China, mainly along the coast of Fujian and Guangdong provinces, is going to be for wind and rain, whereas the rest is mostly for rain impacts, for flooding and things like that. Now, if we go to the moderate impacts, we can see it does happen for the southern third of, and also slight impacts are possible in parts of the Batanes Islands, mainly for wind and rain. Now, looking at moderate impacts, we do have moderate impacts likely going to be occurring for the southern half of Taiwan as the system blows through as a powerful typhoon. A lot of these areas could experience at least typhoon force winds. But there is also the possibility of moderate impacts for parts of southern Fujian province in China there if the system remains a typhoon, which is quite uncertain as to how much it will weaken as it passes over the mountainous terrain of Taiwan. We are currently predicting it to be a high-end tropical storm, but other agencies are predicting it could still be a typhoon by the time it slams into China. So we could have another live stream over the next 12 to 18 hours or so. So yes, there are the possibility of moderate impacts there. Now, looking at the possibility of major impacts, there is the possibility that major impacts could be occurring for parts of southeastern Taiwan there, mainly in Taitung province, as this could be strengthening to a Category 3. And those areas will likely be experiencing the impacts for wind. So here's a look at the, again, for Podal over the next 2 days, and the forecast cone. We have it weakening to a tropical storm over the next 12 hours, and remaining a tropical storm throughout the next 24 hours, and a depression the next 36 hours, and a remnant low within 48 hours. Just speeding into China and weakening, but with it, it's going to be bringing a lot of rain. Now let's briefly touch on Erin, because this is going to be another big system that we'll need to be watching. This graphic was made roughly around almost 9 hours ago, I think. So this is a little bit out of date, but it's generally the same. Okay, so we're forecasting the system to remain a tropical storm for at least the next 48 hours before intensifying into a hurricane, Category 1, before reaching a roughly around Category 2 status over the next 4 days, and likely becoming a major hurricane beyond that. Now again, looking at the forecast cone, this is more so a cone for the center of where it's expected to go. It could go through parts of the northern Lesser Antilles and parts of the northeastern Greater Antilles, including Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Just something to keep an eye out on. And over the 5 to 7 day forecast shows possible it could go over the Turks and Caicos Islands and far eastern Bahamas and could get close to Bermuda. Again, it's quite far out, so we don't know just yet, but we will be having more updates likely over the next week or so on this system. So just be aware that more updates will be posted over the coming days on the Twitter and Facebook and Blue Sky and YouTube accounts. So be on the lookout for that. Now, looking at the impacts that are expected, and this is the next 5 days, we're mainly expecting impacts for the northernmost of the Leeward Islands, parts of the British and United States or U.S. Virgin Islands. The entirety of Puerto Rico could see marginal impacts, and the northeastern part of the Dominican Republic could see those marginal impacts. Now, the areas that could experience slight impacts, again, this is more so a wind threat. Again, pretty much anywhere in that cone could see slight impacts. And if the storm starts looking like it's going to shift a little bit more south, they could see even worse impacts. So again, we'll keep you all updated on that. But yes, it is likely going to become a major hurricane, the Atlantic's first major hurricane of the year. Looking at the global view of tropics right now, we have Typhoon Podal, which is roughly around 105 miles an hour, 90 knots or so, and it's going to be plowing into Taiwan and then into China. We have Tropical Storm Henriette that's still going on, and it is weakening as it moves northwestwards out to sea, with winds of around 50 miles an hour. We have Tropical Storm Erin, which has been maintaining its strength with winds of around 45 miles an hour. That's going to be continuing to move westwards, and we discussed what that could bring. We have the remnants of Dexter, which are approaching the Ireland and the United Kingdom. Pretty weak, though, fortunately. We have a disturbance in the South China Sea with a 40% chance of development over the next 7 days and around a 0% chance over the next 48 hours. We have an Invest 99W, which is approaching the international dateline. We could see a brief tropical or subtropical system out of this. We have another disturbance in the Philippine Sea, which could be impacting Taiwan and the Ryukyu Islands and Sekishima Islands over the next 7 days with around a 20% chance of development. We have an Atlantic disturbance here with a 10% chance of development over the next 48 hours. Could see something briefly subtropical out of that. And we have an area of interest in the eastern Pacific, mainly in the 2 to 7 day range with a 10% chance of development. There is also a tropical wave here in the Western Caribbean. Have not marked that just yet, but we will likely mark that by tomorrow's outlook. We are currently in code red for Typhoon Podal, and we are in code orange for Erin. So again, be on the lookout for more updates as Erin continues to progress towards those islands. Now, looking at the satellite imagery of Podal, we can see that the system is developing that eye there, and we can see pretty much through it there on the visible satellite imagery, and we can see the system mostly lopsided towards the southern side. That is due to shear, northerly shear there, mainly keeping the system more lopsided to the south. That's why the northern parts of Taiwan may not see that much of impacts, whereas the southern parts of Taiwan should see some pretty harsh impacts. The Batanes Islands are getting in some of those rain bands as well. Looking at the infrared imagery, we can see that eastern eye wall there trying to really develop here on this imagery. I'm going to refresh this to see if we can get even newer imagery on it. But yeah, we can see that eye just trying to pop out there in those images. Okay, does this not work? Okay, there we go. Again, though, the system there, you can see generally where the eye is. It's not. I mean, it is getting itself together, and it is taking its time, though. Now, looking at the system right now and why it's intensifying, we have sea surface temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius. So this is pretty much fuel for its rapid intensification. More than enough oceanic heat content there to really ramp up, especially near the coast of Taiwan. That's why this could strengthen even further to a Category 3 before it makes that landfall. And looking at shear, generally a pocket of lower shear, but again, it's from the north. That's why the system is lopsided. Looking at the locations, it is currently around 50 or so kilometers away from Taitung, roughly around 40 kilometers of the coast of where it will likely make landfall, and roughly around 100 kilometers away from Kaohsiung, or Kaohsiung. Don't know how to pronounce that just yet. Orchid Island, it is moving just to the northwest of there, roughly around 35 kilometers away. If we look at where it's likely to make another landfall, in China, roughly around 400 to 500 kilometers away from where it could eventually make that landfall in either Fujian or Guangdong provinces. And its location from Hong Kong, roughly around 700 kilometers away, and from Manila, roughly around 800 kilometers away from there. And again, Taipei is not seeing a whole lot of impacts, and they are only around 300 kilometers away from the center. Alright, now looking at the model runs, the European run still shows strengthening up until landfall, and potentially has it as a typhoon by the time it moves in towards the border of Fujian and Guangdong provinces, before then quickly fizzling out over China. The American run shows it mainly strengthening a little bit, and has it weakening though significantly after it moves over Taiwan, mainly only really a moderate tropical storm after that. Again, though, looking at the European run, it does show another potential disturbance developing in the South China Sea. Could impact Guangdong province. Just too far out to say for sure. We've given it a 40% chance as a reminder over the next 7 days. The American run here does try to spin up two systems, that one with the 40% and the one with the 20%. And it does have it going through the Ryukyu Islands and the Sekishima Islands as a typhoon there over the next 5 to 7 days. So just something to keep an eye out on. I'm not quite certain on this scenario. This is more of a high-end solution. Looking at the German run, it is expected to remain nearly a major typhoon as it slams into Taiwan, and will likely remain a typhoon as it moves into mainly northern Guangdong province. I'm going to go to an earlier run to show you the other systems on it. Just showing a general area of low pressure in the South China Sea, and generally a trough of low pressure near the Ryukyu Islands. This is more of a low-end solution. Looking at the Canadian run, it does have the system weakening a bit before moving into Taiwan. That's not really happening now, and that's why the model has it pretty weak as it's moving into China. That's an unlikely solution. And we can see, though, it does spin up those two other tropical cyclones, which could be impacting Taiwan or the Sekishima Islands. Something to keep an eye out on. Now, looking at the ensembles, this is a better solution beyond the 2 to 5 day range. Of course, all of them mainly are split between if it's going to be making landfall in Guangdong province or Fujian province, but regardless of where it goes, both of those provinces will be seeing impacts. We can see, though, that there is more support on the European ensembles. That's something will likely develop in the South China Sea rather than the Philippine Sea. Could become a typhoon. Some of them have that as that in the Gulf of Tonkin, just too far out to say for sure. And here's a look at the European ensembles again on here, showing something in the Philippine Sea, but more likely something in the South China Sea. We can also see 99W here, expected to do a little wobble there. Could develop again, only around a 30% chance, and it should remain out to sea. Now looking at the American ensembles on things here, and let me update this a bit. Has it again moving into Fujian and Guangdong provinces of China, and we can see, though, that these ensembles do show a lot of support in that South China Sea system, and a little bit of marginal support on that system in the Philippine Sea, headed towards the Ryukyu and Sekishima Islands. So again, just something to keep an eye out on. Could see another system near the Philippine Sea beyond that, but it's too far out to really be talking about that system. Again, looking at the American ensembles here, we can see the Typhoon Podal moving into China. We see the South China Sea disturbance, and we see the Philippine Sea disturbance. Alright, now looking at rainfall impacts over the next 5 days. This is mainly a forecast for the next 2 days, though, for a lot of these areas. For parts, and this is the European run, for parts of Taiwan there, we're seeing general totals of 160 millimeters near Taitung County, around 100 to 120 millimeters of rain. And parts of like Taipei, northern Taiwan, really only around 10 millimeters. In China, there could see around 100 to 200 millimeters in some spots. Again, it's really only going to be happening where the center moves over, and really where the core impacts the core of the system pretty much as it speeds off into China. So wherever the center goes is quite important on these impacts. The Batanes Islands gets a little bit less rainfall, only around 50 additional millimeters of rainfall. Looking at the American run, though, showing generally higher totals over the next 5 days, mainly due to that system east there. Could see amounts of upwards of 300 millimeters off out to sea in the Philippine Sea. But looking at Taiwan, general totals of around 150 to 160 millimeters, and parts of China get lower totals of around 50 to 125 millimeters of rain. Looking at the German model here, showing again totals in Taiwan only around 150 to 200 millimeters of rainfall, whereas parts of China could see as much as 250 millimeters. So again, the general consensus for Taiwan mainly around 100 to 200 millimeters, and parts of China around, I'd say around 100 to 250 millimeters are possible in pockets. Looking at the higher resolution model, the MSM thing here from the Japan Meteorological Agency, we can see some areas in Taiwan could see as much as 300 millimeters of rainfall in those mountainous terrain. And this is only for the next 3 days. Parts of northern Taiwan, mainly around Taipei, only around 10 to 20 millimeters of rainfall. Not a whole lot there. And looking at the forecast now from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, it does have Podal as a Category 2 90-knot typhoon, and after it moves through Taiwan, it still has it as a Category 1 typhoon. I thought that there's some sort of gulf it's called here. The Taiwan Strait, that's what it's called. It still has it as a typhoon in the Taiwan Strait with winds of around 70 knots. So by the time it makes landfall in China, it could remain as a typhoon. That is a possibility. Looking at the typhoon force winds of the system, if we take a look at the wind field here, generally where it's supposed to be over the next, if it follows that center forecast, damaging winds staying again roughly about the same distance there. It's really only going to be where the center moves over, but tropical storm force winds are likely to occur outside of that forecast there. So here's a look again at the general impacts according to this forecast cone. It does have it quickly weakening to a 40-knot tropical storm when it moves inland into China, and a remnant low over the next mainly around 36 hours or so, and dissipating by hour 48. Now looking at the latest Pegasa cone on it, on Goryeo, also known as Podal, it still has it as a typhoon. Again, those storm force winds are likely on the northeastern side of it. Again, area with at least strong winds are likely impacting the entirety of Taiwan and parts of the Sekishima Islands and the Batanes Islands. I'm surprised there's no signal warnings on this. I'm going to double check if there are, because we should be seeing at least signal 1 warnings in effect for the Batanes Islands. Okay, so we do have... Okay, so the northernmost Batanes Islands are now under a Signal 2 warning, and the southern Batanes Islands are under a Signal 1 warning. That makes more sense with the system. But Pegasa is forecasting it will remain a typhoon as it moves into the Taiwan Strait. So again, China could be seeing a typhoon slam into there. That's why moderate impacts are possible there. And it does have it as a tropical storm again, moving further inland into China and dissipating in around 48 to 60 hours or so. Interesting to see the Pegasa forecast curve it more to the west at the end of that forecast. Again, looking at the visible satellite imagery here, we can see how close the system is to landfall. The eye is getting pretty close to the coast of Taitung County. Here's a look at the latest radar imagery. I'm going to actually refresh this to get even more up-to-date imagery. I'll play a loop over the past hour, but we can see the system is getting pretty close to the coast of Taitung County. There we go, we can see that eye is nearly on the coast there. It already passed over, I believe that's Orchid Island, and now it's getting even closer to Taiwan. The eye wall is likely already impacting parts of Taitung County, so we'll likely see power outages, down trees, stuff like that. Maybe some damaged homes from it. really, though, if you're in parts of the western, southwestern portions of Taiwan, and it should be around light rain right now, and the conditions are expected to deteriorate over the next few hours over there. So again, it's likely best to stay indoors as the system moves closer. And again here, I'm going to refresh this to get a more up-to-date imagery on it. This was around 14 minutes ago. We can see that southern eye wall and eastern eye wall pretty strong, and it is closing in on, of course, Taitung County there. I'm going to pull up some more higher resolution imagery on here from windy.com. It's a combination of radar imagery, satellite imagery here. We can see that the system is getting pretty close there to making a landfall. The western eye wall is likely already battering the coast. Let's see if there's any live cameras we can look at. Okay, this might be good. I'm going to see if this is actually a... Okay, it's not really a live camera. It looks like it's just an image. Maybe this one would be something different. Okay, I believe this is in Taitung County still, or no? No, it looks like it's just to the... Okay. I'd like to know if that is in Taitung or not. I'm going to pull up the radar imagery again, just to determine, no, that's likely not in Taitung province. But it is just to the south there, and they are likely getting battered by some of the intense winds there. That's why we can see those trees shaking quite a lot, as there is likely pretty strong winds, and we can see the cameras glitching out some. Not ideal to be out on the roads or anything like that. It's best to be hunkered down if you're in those areas. Looks like the camera may be having some issues right now, which makes sense. Power outages are going to be likely in those areas. Let's take a look if there's any other live cameras here. Not a whole lot around the mountain areas, not a whole lot on the northern side. It's mainly going to be areas further inland. Here, this area, we have a stream which may see some flooding. Not a live camera, though, I don't think. No, it is, I think, if I refresh. Yeah, okay, I mean, it's so close to being a live camera, it's just images that you have to refresh. If we look over here on one of the roads down here, let's take a look and see if there's any bad wind, any rain. Okay, this is a live camera, that's nice. Again, people are out on the roads though. Remember, you should be hunkered down at this point. The system is getting quite close, and you are going to be getting some typhoon force winds pretty soon. So it's really just best to stay hunkered down. Let's take a look at this live camera. Seems like there's a bit of people on the roads there as well. Is this the same camera or no? No, it's not. Again, it's best to be staying indoors and just being ready for the system to be hammering down there. Again, we can see some rain and some glitches as from the wind interfering with the camera there. Just zooming in even more here. Again, though, the camera that's the closest to seeing the impacts are going to be this one here, which keeps glitching out. I guess this works a lot better, yeah, if I zoom in. Again, this is in southeastern Taiwan, just south of, or a bit south, maybe 10-20 kilometers south of where the system will make its landfall. And this is what it's currently experiencing right now. Generally, pretty windy conditions, likely storm force, nearly typhoon force. And again, here's what the radar imagery is looking like compared to the location, getting battered by that southern eye wall nearly. Same with Orchid Island, that area is getting hammered as well. Let's take a look at some of these surface observations to get an idea of the pressure the system has, and any reported wind, things like that. It doesn't seem like there's a surface observation on this island. I thought there would be on Orchid Island. I guess it's not really an airport. Not a whole lot of the stations are reporting. Well, this one shows that winds have increased to typhoon force gust in Taitung as of their most recent surface observation of around 10 minutes ago. So they are already seeing typhoon force winds, so it's likely that other camera is experiencing, or typhoon force gust, excuse me. So let's answer some of the questions now. Mackenzie asked if Aaron is going to become a major hurricane. It is possible there. Here, I'm just going to make sure there's no questions on Twitter. Is that not streaming? Okay, it is. Okay, so possible impacts, or is Aaron going to become a major hurricane? It is quite likely. Right now we're forecasting a 110 knot peak, so around 125 miles an hour. Again, 130 is what you need to become a Category 4, so just below that. It is likely going to be above the threshold of 100 knots for it to become a major hurricane, and we're forecasting again 110 knots. So 115 miles an hour for major, we're forecasting 125. Again, the forecast will adjust over the coming days, and I will continue providing updates on it to keep you all informed. Bermuda should keep an eye on this system, I do believe. And they also ask if, here, hold on, oops, opened up on something on accident, if Podal's going to become a major typhoon. Again, it doesn't have much time to strengthen further, but it is a solid Category 2 at this time. It looks quite solid on radar imagery as well, so it's probably just below and on the cusp of becoming a major typhoon. I'm going to see if there's any updates from the Indo-Pacific Typhoon Warning Center. Let's see, they have it as around 85 knots, so they haven't really increased the intensity, which I find interesting. I'm going to see their reasoning there on their forecast. Dry air continues to intrude the northwestern quadrant, and the weakness remains evident in the mid and upper levels as evidenced by the enhanced infrared imagery as well as radar imagery. The initial intensity is at 85 knots. Dvorak is showing around 90 knots. There's 971 millibars on Lanyu Island, and so it's around 970 millibars. So yes, it is a little bit weak on that northern side, but on the southern side it is quite strong. Again though, because of the forward motion, the northern side would likely be the strongest winds of the system. But because it has a weakness, again, that counteracts that. So again, likely only a Category 2, but we will likely see some typhoon force winds in the eye wall there, those strong, those areas you see the intense colors of red and nearly pink in some areas, like it is for Orchid Island. Could see some just above the minimal typhoon winds that some areas are already experiencing in gust. Mackenzie asked, what will be the next typhoon system? Again, looking at the next 7-day forecast from us, showing around a 40% chance of something tropical developing in the South China Sea and a 20% chance in the Philippine Sea. Looking at ensembles here, showing some support of something developing in the South China Sea more so than something in the Philippine Sea. So really, what could become the next typhoon? It looks like more likely it would be in the South China Sea, but if that doesn't happen, it's more likely than the Philippine Sea. And this is over the next 5 to 7 days. We could see another typhoon. But it's too far out to say for sure. We're only going around 40% chance of at least a tropical depression. Yep, Mackenzie also points out something important there. Podal is not going crazy with that southern monsoon like with Wipa. It's a pretty compact system relative to Wipa here. It's not really impacting the Philippines, only with the cirrus clouds. It is impacting the Batanes Islands, though, and parts of the Babuan group of islands. But yeah, really only the cirrus clouds there, the outflow of the system. You can see the winds, or the clouds moving in this direction. That wispy clouds. just general outflow from the system, the exhaust of the system, pretty much. Let's see what else is being asked there. Mackenzie asked, how much rainfall in Manila and the rest of the Philippines? Let's look at that. So again, here's a look at the radar imagery of the Typhoon compared to the Philippines. Not a whole lot of rain near the Philippines. Now, if we look at the rainfall forecast over the next 5 days, let's do. Parts of Manila and Quezon City, around 70 millimeters of rain, and most of the Philippines under that. The American run, though, is going to go a little bit higher because of those tropical systems. Maybe some areas of upwards of 150 millimeters of rain are possible, with, again, Manila getting only around 50. The German run shows lower totals, or around 50 to 100 millimeters of rain in Manila, and only around higher amounts of up to 100 millimeters for the rest of the Philippines. So again, not a whole lot of rain. Let's look at the access model. Again, not showing a whole lot of rain over the next 5 days, only around 50 millimeters at most. So really, around 25 to 100 millimeters of rain are expected over the Philippines over the next 5 days or so not a whole lot. I did want to look at the extreme forecast across the world right now. Starting off with temperature, we have a record-breaking heat wave impacting the northeastern part of the United States and far eastern Canada, where for parts of Maine, I do believe there are heat advisories in effect for those areas. I'm just going to double check. Yes, and there is a heat warnings in effect for parts of Canada from that record-breaking heat wave. In parts of the United Kingdom, there is some pretty hazardous heat impacting there. In parts of Germany as well, they've issued, looking at my phone here, official warning of strong heat there. With heat stress there, record-breaking heat happening in parts of Egypt there, and some cooler temperatures happening in parts of Africa there. Generally, though, there's a little bit more heat than coolness. Heat in Australia there, not record-breaking though. Philippines a little bit cooler, and of course Taiwan cooler than average from this tropical system. Excuse me. Looking over the next few days, again, Egypt is going to be staying in that heat wave, and then it should calm down by around Friday. The United Kingdom's likely to continue to experience a heat wave there. Nothing really too cold right now. The northeastern United States is going to flip to a cooler pattern and that upper trough moves through. That's going to be tugging air and out, trying to out to sea. Now let's look at the wind forecast. Of course, it is going to be pretty windy for parts of Taiwan. Not record-breaking, though. I do believe it's kind of close. Of course, for a daily record, this model kind of underdoes things. Pretty windy for parts of the Pacific Ocean and parts of, I forget what this is called, pretty record-breaking winds in the... Okay, I'm going to look this up real quick. Where that is, the Hudson Bay. Quite windy there. Of course, quite windy from Aaron there. Calm conditions in some areas of the Pacific and parts of the southern Atlantic. Pretty calm for parts of the United Kingdom there. Pretty gusty for parts of northern Turkey. Kazakhstan, again, parts of Taiwan as well. Philippines, not seeing a whole lot there. I'm not seeing anything that stands out too much. Now, looking at the rainfall. Again, quite rainy conditions for parts of northern Quebec there and Newfoundland and Labrador. Parts of Alaska as well, record-breaking rainfall there or snow. Parts of Taiwan, nearly record-breaking rainfall there, of course, from Typhoon Podal. Just going to respond to a question. Alright. Not seeing a whole lot of rainy conditions or dry conditions happening really anywhere else. Nothing too record-breaking, pretty much. Maybe some dry conditions in parts of the United Kingdom, parts of Africa there, Central Africa. Not a whole lot, though. Okay, I'm going to see if there's any other questions. Not really any other questions as of right now. Okay. So again, looks like we're around an hour away from landfall. Okay, I'm going to look up one last thing here. Because I do plan out to look at the meteor shower. Like right now I'm just trying to see how far away would I have to go. It's around 45 minutes, so I'd leave at around 1 o'clock. Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure there. Okay. So Mackenzie says Atlantic is going crazy just like the Eastern Pacific. Well, I mean, the Atlantic isn't going too crazy, just yet it's only really just one major hurricane. The Eastern Pacific was spawning a lot of tropical storms. Let's take a look at a more deeper dive on Aaron here. Again, it's going to be this upper trough here that tries to tug it to the north. Could see some impacts in Bermuda, but that's generally too far out. Beyond that, though, there's not really another signals for more tropical waves to develop. I mean, looking at the European AI run, does show 2 tropical waves there, maybe try to develop. That second one's particularly interesting. Yeah, generally, though, the environment was much more favorable for Aaron than it's going to be for these other systems, mainly due to the MJO and where that was positioned. Could see something develop in the Bay of Campeche and southwestern Gulf of Mexico. Other than that, though, it's not too crazy, not a whole lot of storms. Mackenzie asked a good question, if Aaron's going to become a Category 5. Well, let's take a look at the HAFS models, and someone mentioned the German model, so I want to take a look at that. Okay, it hasn't fully loaded yet, alright. But yeah, let's take a look at the hurricane models on, excuse me, not Podal, Aaron here. They do show the system struggling for at least the next 48 hours or so, and maybe even a bit longer than that before it becomes a hurricane. The HWRF run has it becoming a Category 3 with winds of around 105 knots, so around 120 miles an hour. That's quite low compared to Category 5 on the major scale. Looking at the HMON, shows it at around 110 knots, so that's around 125 miles an hour. A bit closer, but not really there. The HAFS A model there shows it peaking with winds of only around 100 knots, so 115 miles an hour. And looking at the HAFS B run, shows it peaking out with winds only around 80 knots, so not even major hurricane, not even Category 2, only Category 1 there. So again, it's not like a guarantee that it's going to try and reach Category 4 or even Category 5 status. Here's a look at the hurricane models again, only really showing major hurricane. This run is the only one that's been showing Category 5 out of it. I don't know if that's the HAFS A model or what that is. That goes quite ballistic. I'm going to look at that again. Yeah, I'm guessing that the next HAFS A run is going to be showing maybe Category 5 out of it. I'm not so sure, though. The pattern does look a little bit more favorable beyond this range for further intensification out of it. Generally, we have equatorial outflow there with the system. Looking at wind shear, it's mainly just the outflow from the storm itself there, I believe. So yeah, I mean, it's quite uncertain whether or not it's going to become a Category 5, or really it looks like it's going to be a Category 3, mainly mid-range to high-end Category 3, but it very well could try to become a Category 5. We'll see. Of course, it depends on how strong it is by the time it nears the islands. It's not doing too well just yet. I do believe it has gotten a little bit better and more organization. We're just starting to see more thunderstorms flare up with it. But we are approaching diurnal maximum, which is when we should see more thunderstorms flare up, more convection there. And yeah, I mean, we could be seeing a more... I mean, the system could try to quickly intensify here. The forecast calls for it to generally remain strength for a full 12-hour period at least, before then beginning to intensify. So this system could outperform expectations. We'll see. Again, it is forecasted to reach a major hurricane by Saturday night, and remain one through Sunday night. See, Mackenzie says Podal is now 30 kilometers before its landfall in Taiwan. Let's take a look at that. Yes, we can see some of that lightning activity on the southern side there. And let's take a look at the latest radar frame. I'm gonna drink some water. Excuse me. Here again, the eye is getting pretty close to it. Probably some of the northwestern eye wall is already moving ashore. If we look at a radar loop of, let's say, the past 3 hours or so from the system, again, the eye is starting to close on that northwestern side. Let me make sure it loops. Yeah. There, just because of the mountainous terrain of Taiwan, it does not want to move over there, over the country. Okay. Alright, so not really any other surface observations to look at just yet, but let's take a look at the distance again from it making a landfall. This imagery is a bit out of date, but we'll check. Generally around, it's even less than 30 kilometers actually, it's only around 20 to 22 kilometers away from its landfall, maybe even less than that. It's probably around 20 kilometers by now is my best guess. So I mean, it is getting pretty close, and if we take a look at how far or how fast it's been traveling, let's pull up this radar imagery. Let's go throughout the past hour. Shows it moving at around 30 kilometers an hour. So yeah, I mean, a landfall there within the next hour or so is likely. We have the timer down to 45 minutes. Apparently there's a lot of thunderstorms near Florida, so I'm just taking a look at that. Oh dang, I see his positioning, okay. Okay, just looking at that. Alright. So of course, again, we're getting closer and closer to landfall. This imagery is around 18 minutes out of date. And 18 minutes out of date, it showed it was around 30 kilometers away, moving at 30 kilometers an hour. So, yeah, around 45 minutes or so makes sense for a landfall. Again, if you have any questions about your impacts in certain areas over the next few days, you can always type in the chat, and I will gladly answer. I'm going to read the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, their forecast discussion. But Mackenzie first asked, actually, will we be having anything in the North Indian Ocean or South Indian Ocean? Let's look at that. I'm going to just double check if this run's coming out. It hasn't fully come out just yet. But yeah, if we take a look at the European AI run and we take a look at the North Indian Ocean and the Southwest Indian Ocean, North Indian Ocean could be seeing something try to spin up over the next 5 days or so. Again, it is quite uncertain. The other models aren't really picking it up that well. I'm going to pull up another version of this model. This is the one that typically detects land depressions. We could see something try to spin up over the next week or so. Might mark that over the coming days. But now if we take a look at the European AI model in the Southwest Indian Ocean beyond that range, not seeing a whole lot. Maybe some land depressions trying to form near India or over India. Some or a bit of spin by, I don't know, I'm not really seeing a whole lot of activity in the Southwest Indian Ocean, so it should be quite calm. But again, you did help catch the signal. I do remember that, Mackenzie, asking about the Southwest Indian Ocean, and eventually 2 tropical cyclones likely formed 2 weeks out, and the European AI model did predict the pattern there. Let's take a look at the other basins, though. The Western Pacific from the European AI model showing something spinning up in the South China Sea and the Gulf of Tonkin, and something potentially developing beyond that there, again in the South China Sea and the Philippine Sea near the Ryukyu and Sekishima Islands. It's just too far out there really to tell if that will be anything or not. Previous runs have been detecting something as well. Looking at the Eastern Pacific, let's see if there's anything new that pops up there. There's this one disturbance we marked with a 10% chance. Beyond that, though, it stays quite calm. Definitely nothing happening in Florida there, though. That's too far out. Yeah, there, though, we can see the ITCZ, basically where all the winds converge there. Not seeing anything really spinning up along that. Maybe beyond that range, but again, not seeing a whole lot. Yes, Mackenzie, you're right. Tropical Storm Awo, or Ao, got its name. It was likely the 3rd tropical cyclone, though. There were likely 2 that weren't named, that formed. Looking in the other basins, like the Australian region, not really expecting much in there. Again, it's pretty much winter for them right now. Not really expecting much. Same thing in the Southwestern Pacific. Generally quiet there, mainly just non-tropical lows, non-tropical cyclones near New Zealand, stuff like that, those shenanigans. So I was going to read the Joint Typhoon Warning Center discussion on Podal, which I believe they've made a reasoning on it. Let's take a look at the reasoning here. Yep, so it says satellite analysis, initial position, and intensity discussion. Animated multispectral satellite imagery depicts Typhoon Podal with a mostly filled eye and a prominent band. Let me make sure that this is being read. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a bit. Let me see if that helps. Not a whole lot. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, well, it's kind of positioned off towards the west. Don't know how to fix that right now. Sorry about that. But a satellite analysis initial position depicts it with a mostly filled eye and a prominent band of deep convection tightly wrapping around the southern and eastern sectors of the system. So again, if we look at that radar imagery of the system, we can see, again, it's mostly on the southern side and eastern side with all the banding there. That it has not really on the north and western side because of that northern shear. The warm eye that was previously apparent in animated EIR imagery has since closed, but cloud tops just east of the center remain extremely cold with cloud tops in the minus 86 degrees Celsius range at the time of their outlook there, so pretty cold imagery. And again, though, that eye that it has that was trying to pop out has since got covered up in the higher levels. The structure of the core of the vortex has steadily improved in animated radar imagery over the past 6 hours as it approaches the coast, hinting at a continued intensification trend. Microwave imagery revealed a well-defined microwave eye feature with a slight weakness in the northern portion, likely due to the persistent northeasterly shear acting on the system. Let's take a look at some of the, I'd like to take a look at some of the environment conditions. Okay, it's not appearing on here. I guess I'll pull it up through something else. I do want to cover Aaron first on this, though, on its environment. Shear is expected to remain quite low again over the next few days before maybe increasing, mainly due to the strength of the system, it appears. Sea surface temperatures are going to be gradually improving. Moisture stays around the same, so mainly dry air maybe impacting it some. But again, though, the intensity trend is in up and up there. Now let's take a look at Podal and its microwave imagery here. Dang, okay, looking quite good there on that imagery. I'll just pull it up on here, though. Here, I'm going to pull up when that imagery was again. That was 1222Z, I think is what they were mentioning. No, that's not 1222. I don't think, no. Maybe 22Z, that's the time that they're talking about. No, not seeing that on there either. Anyways, though, we can see the microwave imagery on where the storm was a couple hours ago. We can see the northern part of the eye was the weak spot, and it's still remaining generally the weaker side of it due to that shear and potentially some dry air intrusions. Environmental analysis indicates that Podal is in a favorable environment characterized by strong westward and equatorial outflow aloft. So if we take a look at the satellite imagery again, we can see that outflow on the western side and towards the equator there, towards the south there. So it's pretty healthy in terms of its exhaust, its outflow. Let's see what else. Low to moderate, 15 to 20 knots northeasterly vertical wind shear, and very warm waters with 30 to 31 degrees Celsius sea surface temperatures. The initial position is, of course, placed with high confidence based on the ADA animated radar imagery from Taiwan, and extrapolation from the microwave eye in the mentioned WSFM image. The initial intensity of 90 knots is assessed with medium confidence, mainly with a Dvorak deprint estimate of 91 knots. Let's see again. Pretty much a favorable environment there with, again, wind shear of around 15 to 20 knots, sea surface temperatures of 29 to 30 Celsius, and again, good outflow. So now forecast reasoning. There is no significant changes, but the forecast discussion says Podal is forecast to continue tracking west-northwestwards along the southwestern periphery of the subtropical ridge throughout the entire forecast period. So let's take a look at that and discuss that in more detail. I believe I can pull it up on here. Okay, so let's see, where's the system? There it is. So it's on the southwestern side of the subtropical ridge there. That's mainly just forcing it westwards. That's why we've continued to see it move westwards a little bit towards the south, because that southern side of the ridge kind of pushed it down a little bit to the south. But yeah, it is expected to continue moving westwards throughout the forecast period because of that ridge. An initial landfall along the southeastern coast of Taiwan is expected to occur within the next couple of hours, just south of Taitung. A second landfall is forecast to occur near hour 18 along the southeastern coast of China. Erratic track motions are possible as the vortex interacts with the southern extent of the central mountain range, of course mainly with Taiwan. We've seen interesting things happen with, for example, Gaimi. Regarding intensity, Podal is expected to reach its peak intensity as it makes landfall, currently estimated to be 90 knots near the core of the circulation. After Podal makes landfall in Taiwan, the mountainous terrain will cause the system to weaken. The forecast track has slowly been shifting southwards, and therefore causing the typhoon strength system, or causing less interaction with the central mountain range. A borderline typhoon strength system is now currently forecast to emerge in the Taiwan Strait. That's what we were showing on here. It's likely to remain a typhoon still in the Taiwan Strait, so it could be impacting China as a typhoon. See there. Nevertheless, Podal will certainly weaken as it approaches the coast of Taiwan. After the second landfall, Podal will quickly erode with dissipation forecast to occur around hour 36 as the remnant vortex treks further inland. So in terms of the model discussion, numerical model guidance is in very close agreement with a 72 nautical mile cross track spread at hour 24 and minimal along track spread. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center is forecast is placed close to the multi-model consensus with high confidence. Overall intensity guidance agrees on a weakening trend from now and onward, mainly after landfall. There's some increased uncertainty regarding the amount of weakening it will have after the initial landfall over southern Taiwan, lending medium confidence with the intensity forecast. So again, we're quite certain on where it's going, but we're quite uncertain as to how strong it will be when it emerges into the Taiwan Strait. Mackenzie says it's now 19 kilometers away from landfall. Let's look at the latest radar imagery to confirm. Okay, there we go. That shows it better. Now this one shows it at around 23 kilometers away, maybe 20 kilometers away. But this was a little bit out of date, so yeah, it's likely around 19 kilometers away or less. Landfall is probably going to happen within the next 33 minutes or so. And then we can see some of those, what we call shear spikes here on that northern side because it's getting sheared from the north. We are seeing some more lightning activity on the southern side of that, which is pretty interesting. And they're looking at the satellite imagery, the visible imagery there from the mesosector getting pretty close to making landfall, and it does have a little bit of that eye to it. Just looking at some other things as well online for flooding, things like that. Seems like there's some decent flooding going on across the United States. Dang, okay, that's quite interesting. Just looking at a thunderstorm that formed near El Paso, Texas. Okay. Anyways, though, we can see that some parts of northern Taiwan wouldn't even be noticing it, really. I mean, near Taipei, those areas, it's pretty much sunny there. Not seeing a whole lot. You can see some of those clouds over the mountainous terrain of northeastern Taiwan there. But generally, not even cloudy at all. No rain, no nothing there impacting the northwestern parts of Taiwan. Yes, again, though, we are getting pretty close to landfall. This imagery is roughly, let me take a look at this again. Roughly around, I'd say, 8 minutes out of date, 8 to 9 minutes out of date. But yeah, I mean, parts of the eye look like they're already moving on shore there, in parts of far the coast of Taitung County, some areas. Going to refresh some of the radar imagery to get a more detailed look at it. This imagery is roughly 13 minutes out of date, and again, though, we can see it's near the southwestern parts of, the northwestern part of the eye is now creeping onto the coastal regions of Taitung County. All right. I'm going to look at that radar imagery another time. Okay, yeah, there is a little bit of a glitchy box there on that top right side of it. Again, though, that eye is quite cloudy. If I turn off radar imagery here, and we go to more visible imagery there, you can see it kind of trying to clear up there, but infrared imagery, you can see it right there, the eye, pretty much stacked with radar imagery. So it's again likely a low-end to mid-range Category 2. Tried to get pretty close to Category 3, doesn't seem like it's going to make it there. Alright. So again, if you have any other questions, you can leave them in the chat. Looks like I will be ending the stream soon. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of people watching, so that's why. If you have any questions about certain cities or locations, you can always ask and I will gladly answer. Thought the system would be making landfall by around now, but it seems like I believe it's gone slower compared to forecast. Yeah, and more to the north actually than forecasted. That's going to have a bit of implications on its intensity when it reaches the south or the Taiwan Strait. You can see how far north it's going right now compared to that forecast cone, the center of where it should be going. Ooh, Mackenzie asked a good question. If Aaron's going to make landfall in the United States, let's take a look at that. Again, here's a look at the forecast cone over the next 7 days. Again, this is an unofficial forecast. If you extended it more north, you could get some parts of the United States in that cone. Again, it's too far out to say for sure, but over the next week or so, or like 7 days, 168 hours, it's not really in that forecast cone. The National Hurricane Center cone, again, it's not in that either. If I I'm going to pull up the probability of tropical storm force winds, see if that is updated yet. The probability of tropical storm force winds here, I'll try and pull this up on a new tab. If I pull up the probability of tropical storm force winds over the next 5 days or so, this area in this gray coloring is around, I believe, 1% or so. You can see how close it is to around southern Florida there, parts of Bermuda, nearly in that. Again, though, it's just too far out to say for sure where the system's going and those winds where it's going to be impacting. It's going to have quite a strong wind field, though, so if it goes on that southern end, some of these islands could see impacts, though. St. Lucia's in the 5% chance, same with Martinique. Dominica and parts of southern Guadeloupe are in the 10%. Northern Guadeloupe and parts of Antigua and Barbuda there in the 30%, or 20 to 30%, excuse me. let's see, what is that, Barbuda there, I think, is in the 30% range. Same with Anguilla, maybe the northeastern tip in the 40% range. Parts of Puerto Rico, there are around 20 to 30% chance. Again, this is for tropical storm force winds. Turks and Caicos Islands, around 10% chance or so. But nothing in the United States yet. It's all below 5% chance. Okay, I will go on a little bit longer. It all has to determine with the trough that's going to try and tug it to the north here. If I show you this forecast here, it's going to be this trough. This guy up here tries to tug it. It reaches its arm out to pull it out to sea there. Has been trending a little bit. I mean, it's quite confusing as to where it's going. It's trended a little bit stronger. That trough that tugs it towards Iceland and then beyond that. Curious here. German run shows it a little bit stronger, so it's likely going to try to tug it, I believe. Not seeing a whole lot with that. But again, I don't really think it's going to make landfall in the United States. It's a very low probability. It's still possible, of course, if the trough downtrends like crazy. But again, we should see the Hurricane Center forecast start extending more and more to the north. Still hasn't shown that northwards curve just yet. But here, if I show you all the forecast here from the hurricane models, you can see where the Hurricane Center forecast ends and where the hurricane models show it going beyond that. Really shows it curving northwards. We'll see though. Some of the models continue showing it moving west, so we'll see. I think it's quite unlikely for it to make that landfall in the United States. If you have any other questions, let me know and I'd be glad to answer. And though it is getting quite close to Taiwan there, let me see if there's any new imagery on it. Should probably refresh this page. Oh. There we go, it's getting pretty close. Some of that eye is already moving on shore into Taitung province there. Going to refresh this imagery. This radar imagery from around 12 minutes ago. I guess I'll save data. Why not? Okay, that's not really helping. Alright. Mackenzie says 16 kilometers away from with Podal from the coast of Taiwan. So let's take a look at the latest radar imagery here and see just how far away it is from the coast, at least on this imagery. Shows it being only around 12 kilometers away from the coast, 12 to 13 kilometers away from the coast, so likely may make landfall in Taimali. Getting pretty close, and a lot of lightning activity now on that southern side. Thankfully, though, there hasn't really been a whole lot of a rebuilding, I don't think, on that northern side. Not really. I mean, it's been getting a little bit more organized, I think. Okay, let's see. Alright, that is going to be it. So I am going to be doing a little bit of a wrap-up. JWB asked, how do I make that landfall timer? It's some sort of script on OBS. Don't really know how to explain it. I got it like a year ago or so. It's free though. If you look up something on how to make a timer with OBS, you should be able to find it. I don't know where I found it or how to do it again, but I found that like a timer. So let's discuss the tropics over the next 5 minutes or so. Again, looking at the broad view, there is an area of interest in the North Atlantic, not really impacting anywhere. Could be something briefly subtropical. We have an area of interest in the Eastern Pacific, shouldn't really impact anywhere. Same with Henriette's, it's going to be going out to sea. And same with 99W, going to be staying out to sea. May cross into the Eastern Pacific, or Central Pacific, excuse me. Something to look out for, or something to watch. It's going to be quite confusing if the system, or how it's going to be tracked if it keeps moving across the international date line. Current positioning has it as 178 degrees west. Earlier though, or east, excuse me. So yeah, I mean, we'll see if it crosses the international date line, if the Central Pacific Hurricane Center will mark it. It's quite interesting to see the, let's see here. Henriette go that far north on this map, nearly at the edge of it. Expected to turn post-tropical any moment now, so it's not really going to be able to stay that far north and disappear off the map, which I was hoping to see. And just pretty crazy how far north that tropical storm is. At the latitude of California, which is pretty surprising in the Central Pacific and Eastern Pacific. Yes, so many tropical cyclones out at sea, Mackenzie says. Looking at some other things, though, we do have Dexter that is moving into the United Kingdom and Ireland. Here, I'm just going to actually double-check that forecast. So I'm not quite sure where that's actually going. It's been continuing to track westwards, and yeah, it's going to move into Ireland. So it's this little guy right there. You go to... There you can see the weaker circulation, remnants of Dexter going into Ireland, and then eventually the United Kingdom. There's this low in the Atlantic, and then, of course, there's Dexter. Or, excuse me, there's Aaron. Summing it up, though, looking at the other areas, we have a 20% chance of development over the next 7 days near the Philippine Sea. That's mainly in the next 4 to 7 day range, and beyond that, the South China Sea is mainly confined to the 2 to 7 day range, excuse me, with a 40% chance of development over the next 2 to 7 days. Of course, our main two systems are going to be Aaron here, which will likely become a major hurricane over the next 5 days, maybe even 4 days. It could deliver some slight impacts for parts of the northeastern Lesser Antilles and parts of the northernmost Leeward Islands. And this does include parts of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, so just something to keep an eye out on, and the U.S. Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands. Beyond that, though, it's quite uncertain where it's going to go. It could be impacting Bermuda as a major hurricane, or could be impacting the far eastern United States as a major hurricane. Just too far out to say for sure. Could be impacting the Turks and Caicos Islands and the far eastern Bahamas as well as a major hurricane. So I will continue to have updates on this system over the coming days. And lastly, looking at Podal here, again, it's expected to deliver major impacts for parts of where it's making landfall, potentially major impacts. I don't really think it's going to anymore because it's weakened, or it's not really strengthening as much as it could, fortunately, due to the northerly shear. Again, though, it is expected to move across Taiwan into the Taiwan Strait, could still remain a Category 1 typhoon. That's why there's possibility of moderate impacts. We will be doing another live stream on this system if it remains a typhoon at landfall in either Fujian or Guangdong provinces. Other than that, though, the system is expected to, again, continue moving westwards in through China, delivering some slight impacts wherever the center goes in terms of flooding. Should generally be it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will keep you, or here, I'm gonna look at the latest satellite imagery one last time here. Yep, about to make landfall there any moment now. Should be making landfall within the next 13 minutes, but I do need to go soon to look at the comet show. If you haven't seen that yet, you should be prepared for that, especially in the United States if it's not cloudy for you. That's what I am going to be getting ready for. So I will be seeing you all in the next update, which will probably be on Aaron over the next... it should be out in the next 3 days or so, 2 to 3 days. I'll see how I'm gonna... I may be sick then, just due to some vaccination stuff, but I'll try to provide more updates for you all. I will see you in... thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next update. Stay